Okay, so we are 100% focused on what we are working on, which is a clear and transparent price on carbon. It's always good to know that there's other people that have another pathway towards a stable climate, and our next speaker is one that has really one of the most interesting, fascinating ways with a really remarkable story of how to get there. That's Lou Helmuth, who received his undergraduate degree from Boston College and his law degree from Vermont Law School. Lou is the Deputy Director of our Children's Trust, where he helps guide all of our Children's Trust programming, strategies, and organizational development. Prior to joining our Children's Trust in 2013, Lou represented citizens' environmental groups in a variety of environmental causes, as well as youth with disabilities from around the country in federal and state lawsuits involving their educations. Lou's career prior to our Children's Trust also includes service in other nonprofit leadership roles and in legal education administration. Lou presented at our Los Angeles conference earlier this year in January, and after we heard him, it was priority number one to make sure that he could make it here in June to tell the story of our Children's Trust. So, Lou Helmuth.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. It's a complete privilege for me, certainly personally, but also for our Children's Trust to be here before you, the Citizens Climate Lobby. Everyone at our Children's Trust, I have goosebumps right now, we really have incredible and remarkable respect for the work that you all have been doing for now 10 years, congratulations, and for the work that you continue to do, and that all of you in this room are gonna go to Capitol Hill and do tomorrow. It's crazy. Truly, we stand on your shoulders and are grateful to do so. I want to thank Mark and the entire staff at Citizens Climate Lobby for the introduction and also for the invitation to come back and talk with you all today, and also for all of the logistics support in presentation help and otherwise. So thank you, CCL staff and Mark. In absentia, I want to very definitely acknowledge and thank Marshall Saunders, who for many years has been providing our Children's Trust with support and strategic guidance about the unfolding of our campaign, which, as Mark just mentioned, is similar to the work that Citizens Climate Lobby does, because you have a very focused and direct path toward what you're trying to accomplish. As do we at our Children's Trust, have a very focused and distinct path toward what we are hoping to accomplish. So, I am Lou Helmuth. I am the Deputy Director of our Children's Trust. We are a small 501c nonprofit organization based in Eugene, Oregon. Do you remember what Anthony said about Eugene, Oregon? Okay, yeah, right. So curiously, our Children's Trust is based in Eugene, Oregon. And we are a small staff of about 14 people now. Less than a year ago, we were 6 people. So we are growing exponentially, if 6 to 14 is exponential. But in addition to our staff, we have, like Citizens Climate Lobby, a huge tribe of volunteers who help us to execute our mission. And those volunteers are young people around the globe, lawyers around the globe, experts around the globe in climate science, economics, technical advances, and as well, a sea of members of communities advancing and propping up the work that we do. So, our Children's Trust is a global campaign elevating the voice of youth. It's our singular purpose to give young people a platform relative to the climate crisis. And we provide those platforms in legal forums and in the media. So I'm going to talk at some length about the legal efforts that our Children's Trust supports, but in addition, we have a very intentional effort to give young people a platform in the media so that their voices are heard. Young people are they don't have a vote. They rarely have an opportunity to have their voices heard, to say nothing of having their voices listened to and having individuals held accountable to respond to those voices. So by elevating the voice of young people in the courts and in the media, we are putting them out there so their voices are heard, and so the public and our government must respond to them. The messaging that we are providing youth an opportunity to discuss is securing the legal right to a healthy atmosphere and stable climate system. So everything that we are involved with is geared toward securing the legal right to a healthy atmosphere and stable climate system. Sound familiar? Again, there are just remarkable synergies between our organizations. You are working at the highest levels in this nation in the halls of Congress. We are working at the highest levels in the halls of justice. So the other thing about all of our work and the platforms that we are providing young people with is that young people are certainly advocating for their own rights, but as well the rights of future generations. Our effort is an intergenerational human rights campaign, and it is all undertaken by and on behalf of young people. The legal actions that we support are all youth-led. And what that means is that in the court cases that we bring, which I'm going to talk at length about, all of the plaintiffs are young people. Young people under the age of 21, some as young as 8 and 9. They're getting older as the cases grind through the judicial system. But all the cases, all the claims are brought by young people. All of the claims are science-based as well. So all of our actions share common features. Youth-led, science-based. We're advocating for a singular scientific prescription for climate recovery that I'll touch on in just a moment, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. The other common feature of the legal platform that we support young people on is that the bulk of the actions involve constitutional and public trust principles. As I mentioned before, we are engaged in a global campaign. We have a number of cases here in the United States at the federal court level, in several state courts, but as well we have actions pending in some other nations. We're supporting actions by young people from other nations being brought by pro bono lawyers in other nations. And so each case is a little different from the other because it is being litigated in a different jurisdiction and there are different laws, procedures, and otherwise. But generally speaking, our cases all are grounded in these two legal principles, of constitutional and public trust rights. So, I want to touch on the science-based aspect of our work. As I said, you're all no doubt familiar with this. It is grounded in the lifelong work of Jim Hansen and his colleagues. And forgive me, hands to Jim. And forgive me, but like Anthony before me, I'm not a scientist. And so I really boil down, not choosing a different term for that, but I boil down that very complicated and involved thorough climate analysis into the groundings in our lawsuits, which is that we all know that carbon dioxide in our atmosphere is presently at levels of over 400 parts per million, right? There's a lot of heads nodding. We know that. We're over 400 parts per million of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. And Jim and his colleagues have determined that in order to stabilize our climate system, we must draw down that atmospheric concentration from over 400 parts per million to under 350 parts per million by the year 2100. So we're over 400 and increasing. And in order to stabilize the climate system, we have to draw down to 350 or below by the turn of the next century. And all of our cases are grounded in that principle. And all of our cases are asking for court orders that will mandate government action to achieve that reduction and thus stabilize our climate system. That is, as you all know, a very tall order. We have to get going on this quickly. And when you dig into the studies that Jim and his colleagues have put forth, you see that this is a tall order in terms of time. It's also a tall order in terms of what we need to accomplish. We are asking the courts to order governments to do what is necessary to achieve that metric. So, as I mentioned, we've got a multitude of cases that we support in various jurisdictions. I'm going to focus the rest of my talk on a federal lawsuit that we support here in the United States in the US District Court for the District of Oregon. And without belaboring high school civics, I just want to remind everybody that there are two kinds of judicial systems in our country. We have the federal system and we have our state systems. If you and I are neighbors in the district here, and we are going to bring, district isn't a good example, special circumstance. But if we're all from, if you and I are from Pennsylvania and we have a claim against one another about our property line or something, we're going to bring that in state court, and it's going to be determined by state law. However, if I, a resident of Pennsylvania, if I want to bring an action against my federal government, though I'm in Pennsylvania, but I have a federal claim, I bring that in a federal court. Very different system than that state court system, okay? And when you bring a case in federal court, you start at the first level, the trial court level, and that's called the US District Court. There are several, if not many, US district courts in every state. You bring your federal claim in the one that is closest to you or the one that makes most sense given the content of the cause of action. And so we are supporting young people in this federal lawsuit in the US District Court, so the first level, the trial court level, in Oregon, and we chose to bring the case in Oregon because of the nature of the case and the nature of the plaintiffs. The case is called Julianna the US, and it is brought by 21 young people from around the country. The case is seeking The case is seeking ultimately the implementation of a science-based national climate recovery plan. But let me tell you for a moment just what is it that these young people are really asking for in this case? They are asking for a declaration from their federal court that the aggregate actions of the federal government and the current climate policies violate their constitutional and public trust rights. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit more about what all that means. But what they're asking for is a declaration from the court saying, government, you have violated these young people's constitutional and public trust rights. A statement from a federal court saying that the government has violated young American citizens' rights. The other thing that the young people are asking for in this case is that the court order the federal government to conduct a consumption-based inventory of our CO2 emissions. As many of you may know, there is very little government data about our baseline emissions. It hasn't been completed yet. We don't know how badly we are denigrating our atmosphere and our environment. And so The young people in this case are asking the court to order the federal government to figure out what is our baseline and to do so from a consumption-based perspective rather than just an emission-based perspective. So if we are importing goods from other nations and the manufacture of those goods has emitted a ton of carbon, that's on our backs, right? We're consuming it, we're responsible for it. And most importantly, the umbrella request that the young people have in this federal lawsuit is that the court order the federal government to prepare and implement a science-based recovery plan. Yes. And, you know, as I alluded to a few minutes ago, that word science-based is a very charged term. In this case, it means bring us down to 350 by 2100. It's not like, well, let's think about science a little bit. It is very concretely 350 by 2100. So these 21 young people are asking for a declaration that their constitutional and public trust rights have been violated, that the government better get its act together and conduct an inventory to understand how bad this problem is, and once we know that, figure out the plan to ensure that we stabilize our climate system by achieving 350 parts per million atmospheric CO2 concentration by 2100. I'd like to take a moment. These people, these young people are just incredible human beings. They are from all over the country. And this is a clip of 14 of them just introducing themselves very quickly. You'll note that they are standing out of the building across from which you will all be doing your good work. Well, across from and next to the buildings in which you will all be doing your work tomorrow. They're standing out in front of the United States Supreme Court. This is when 14 of the young plaintiffs were here in DC for the People's Climate March several weeks ago in Washington. So if we could just roll this so you can have a sense of the plaintiffs.
Our lives are being impacted, like Shateska said, right now. Like every kid everywhere, we are facing a future compromised by man-made climate change. So let's meet the plaintiffs who are saying that our lives are being impacted, we're feeling the effects of climate change right now, and we're not okay with it. And our rights are being violated by this government's actions. I'll go first. I'm Kelsey Julianna, I'm 21, and I'm from Eugene, Oregon.
My name is Levi, and I'm from Satellite Beach, Florida. I'm 9 years old.
I'm Nico, I'm 15, and I'm from Beaverton, Oregon.
My name's Shateska, I'm 16 years old and I'm from Boulder, Colorado.
I'm Journey Zephyr and I'm a member of the 18th Sioux Tribe and from Hawaii.
I'm Jacob, I'm 20 years old and I'm from Roseburg, Oregon.
I'm Zealand, I'm 13 years old and I'm from Oregon.
I'm Ozzy Piper, I'm 16 years old from Seattle, Washington.
I'm Jaden Foylan, I'm 14 years old and I live in Rain, Louisiana.
My name is Isaac Bergen, I'm 15 years old, I'm from Beaverton, Oregon.
My name is Kieran Newman, I'm 20 years old and I live in Seattle.
My name is Nick Venner, I'm 15 years old and I live in Colorado.
My name is Jamie Lynn Butler, I'm 16 and I'm from the Navajo Nation.
My name is Victoria Barrett, I'm 18 and I'm from New York.
So, thank you so much. Those of you who know me a little bit know that I'm a bit of a somewhat emotional kind of person. I'm so overcome when I hear that, and for you to receive that in that way is very meaningful. Thank you. In addition, In addition to those 14, there were several others who, because these young people are in school and stuff, right? There are truancy laws. So, you know, several of these next 6 were in DC the prior week for the March for Science, right? So they divided up their efforts and came out to support those critical needs. And we've got Alex Losnak, who is now a sophomore at Columbia University in New York. Hazel Van Ummerson, 11 years old, from Eugene, Oregon. Sahara Valentine, 11 years old, also from Eugene, Oregon. Tia Hatton, now a sophomore at the University of Oregon, from Bend, Oregon. Nathan Bering, 15 years old, from Fairbanks, Alaska. And Sophie Kivlahan, from 17 years old, from Allentown, Pennsylvania. Sophie is Jim Hansen's granddaughter. And so Jim is actually represented in this case as Sophie's guardian, but Jim Hansen is also officially involved in this lawsuit as the guardian for future generations. So, right? I don't know about you, but I can't think of a better guardian for future generations than Dr. James Hansen. These young people move me and all of us involved with our Children's Trust so profoundly. They are passionate, knowledgeable, aware, consequential human beings who have taken on this mantle and charge very purposefully. We occasionally get challenged or criticized of using teenagers in our effort. And in fact, there was an article, an op-ed in the Denver Post just 2 weeks ago, where the Denver Post editorial board criticized the leadership of this case for using teenagers in this capacity. Ladies and gentlemen, we are not, you can't control these young people. And I don't mean that in a negative way at all. They are purposeful individuals, and so just to give you a sense of, a little bit of a deeper sense of them, I'd like to run this clip of Shutescott Martina. As many of you may know of Shutescott, he's one of the 21 plaintiffs. He said in the clip he was 16, he just turned 17 years old. And this is Shutescott outside the courthouse steps after one of the hearings in this case. Okay.
My name is Shutescott. I'm 16 and I've been at the front lines of the struggle for a while now. And it inspires me so much to stand here with these 20 other youth plaintiffs. And every plaintiff has a story. And every plaintiff has a way in which they're going to be impacted by climate change, or already have been impacted by a global problem created by past generations. And this is not easy work. To take time out of our lives to come and do this. Thank you to each and every one of you, to each and every adult who has helped sacrifice to make this happen today. We are making history. And we are standing here today to fight and protect everything that we love. From our land to our waters, to the mountains, to the rivers and forests. To fight for our family, for future generations, for our children, for the planet that we will leave them. We stand here today, changing history, because this is the moment where we decide what kind of legacy we are going to leave behind to future generations. And we're not heroes, and we're not any different than any other young people on the planet. We have the amazing ability to be able to come together like this. And we're fighting for the futures of every young person in the crowd today, of every young person in the world today. That's what we are standing to protect. Thank you. And this cause, we will not back down. We will not be silenced. We will not allow multi-billion-dollar industries to silence our voices. We will not allow the federal government to silence our voices. We will continue to stand in our courts, in our streets, and on the front lines of fossil fuel infrastructure until every pipeline has been shut down, until we force the federal government to put in place climate recovery plans to ensure a healthy, just, sustainable planet for our generation and those to follow. Thank you.
So, as you can see, these young people are quite engaged in this effort. Our Children's Trust is not using these teenagers. So, on the flip side of the 21 plaintiffs, oh, and by the way, I know that I introduced you to 14 plus 6. There's one remaining. You'll meet her at the end of my talk. On the flip side of the 21 young people are the defendants in this case. This case was brought in August of 2015 against the Obama administration, President Obama and his administration. As a result of the election of Donald Trump, the lead defendant in this case is now Donald Trump. The additional defendants in the case are the Office of the President, the Council on Environmental Quality, which is vacant in the Trump White House, the Office of Management and Budget and Director Mulvaney, the Office of Science and Technology, again, another vacant office in the Trump White House, the U.S. Department of Energy and Secretary Perry, the U.S. Department of Interior and Secretary Zinke, the U.S. Department of Transportation and Secretary Chow, the U.S. Department of Agriculture and Secretary Perdue, the U.S. Department of Commerce and Secretary Ross, the U.S. Department of Defense and Secretary Mattis, the U.S. Department of State and Secretary Tillerson, and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and Administrator Pruitt. All those people on the other side of these kids. These are brave young people. And so this case is these 21 young people against Donald Trump and effectively his entire cabinet. But hang on one second. After the case was brought in August of 2015, the National Association of Manufacturers, the American Petroleum Institute, and the American Fuel and Petrochemicals Manufacturers Associations moved to intervene in the case. We didn't sue them. Remember, I said earlier, our cases are all against governments, right? We're not seeking monetary damages. We're seeking affirmative action by our governments. We're not seeking to cause any court orders to issue against private corporations or private individuals. We're seeking court orders against government. Yet, these 3 trade associations, representing the likes of Shell and Chevron, ExxonMobil, BP, and almost all major American manufacturers, asked to be a part of this case. They wanted to join the federal government defending against the young people's actions as interveners in this case because they said the case is a direct threat to their businesses. And in our American justice system, when you have a lawsuit, if I bring a lawsuit against my neighbor and a downstream neighbor is substantively and really importantly impacted by the lawsuit between myself and my neighbor, the court will consider what is that impact. If you want to be in this lawsuit, we'll consider how great the impact could be on you, and if we find it to be great enough, we will allow you to intervene in this lawsuit to protect your interests. So the federal court in this case, the United States Federal District Court, allowed these 3 fossil fuel dominant trade associations to intervene in the case to protect their commercial interests, which they said were gravely at stake as a result of what these young people were trying to do. So what we've got, say again? We'd rather force the federal government to do what's right. We've got the future against the Trump administration and the fossil fuel industry in the halls of justice. This federal lawsuit really involves 2 primary legal underpinnings that I mentioned before, the public trust doctrine and constitutional protections. I'd like to talk just a little bit about what's involved with this public trust doctrine. It dates back to ancient Rome. In 533 AD, the Roman Emperor Justinian put down in writing that by the law of nature, the air, running water, the sea, and consequently the shores of the sea are common to all mankind. Natural resources are common to all mankind. Single individuals can't appropriate it for their own use to the denigration of the interests of everybody else. And beyond that, absolutely, right? And beyond that, we have to preserve them not only for all of us here on the planet today, but for the benefit of future generations. These are limited natural resources which are shared in common by all humanity and all future humanity. So back in 533 AD, it was understood that these are common natural resources that we all have to share. Because our American legal system comes to us through the Roman Empire and Roman law, and many, many legal systems around the world are grounded in Roman law. This public trust doctrine comes to us and is embedded in our American legal system. It imposes a fiduciary duty on government to manage essential natural resources so they're available for all of us today and so that they are available for future generations. We are asking that that public trust doctrine be applied relative to the atmosphere. So, federal government, exercise your public trust responsibility to take this essential natural resource and manage it so that it protects all of us here today and so that it protects future generations in perpetuity. Guess what? To do that, you got to bring down CO2 from over 400 to under 350 by 2100. We know how to do this. And so we're saying that the public trust doctrine obligates the federal government to draw down carbon dioxide from 400 to 350. The second component part of this lawsuit are the constitutional principles. There are really two primary constitutional principles. They all come from the Fifth Amendment to the United States Constitution. The first says that American citizens cannot be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And in this case, the young people are saying that their right to life and property is in fact being deprived of them because of climate change. They are experiencing consequences right now that are impacting their life and impacting their property. They can demonstrate that their lives are, that their personal security is threatened by wildfires and drought and flooding and sea level rise. And so as a result of climate change, young people's constitutional rights are being violated. I actually just misspoke. It's not because of climate change. It's because of the government actions that have caused climate change. So our government has caused a situation that threatens the personal security of these young people and takes away their rights to life and property without due process of law. It's a constitutional violation. Similarly, the Fifth Amendment also provides that we have equal protection of laws in this nation, and the laws of this nation must apply equally to all of us. However, what we have in the circumstance right now is that young people are facing a dramatically different situation than the likes of a 58-year-old like me, right? Because of the government's actions that have caused climate change and that continue to exacerbate climate change, young people are going to experience something tremendously much more grave than anything I am going to see in my lifetime. And as a result, we have American citizens being treated differently as a result of the actions of government. And that creates a violation of the Equal Protection Clause of the United States Constitution. So lawsuits are made up of two things. They're made up of the law that governs and then the facts, right? Yes, there are these legal principles that the government must abide by and adhere to, but the question is, have they violated that, right? So we need to prove that the law exists as I've just described it. There is constitutional protection, there is public trust protection, and then we also have to prove that the government violated those constitutional and public trust rights. And so the component parts there begin with the government's longstanding knowledge of climate danger. Back in the late 1950s, 1955, 1957, the US Office of Naval Research found that increasing CO2 from the burning of fossil fuels is linked to climate change, rising temperatures, and hurricane frequency. Okay? Late 1950s, we knew. Burn fossil fuels, you get climate change and a lot of stuff, right? Bad stuff. 1965, there was a White House report prepared by the Johnson White House that found a lot of things, including that the burning of fossil fuels causes irreversible climate change. The report predicted sea level rise of 10 feet and apocalyptic change. A White House report, 1965, published, we have hard copies of it in the office, saying that the burning of fossil fuels will cause apocalyptic change, 1965. Several other interstitial elements, not the least of which is Jim Hansen going to Congress, testifying about the consequence and anthropogenic causes of climate change in 1988. In 1990 and 1991, as a result of some impetus provided by a bipartisan group of senators at the time, the EPA produced two reports, The EPA produced two reports that found that CO2 levels should be stabilized at 350 parts per million, and limiting emissions cannot wait. So 1990, 2000, 2010, 27 years ago, we've got 350 written down. We know this stuff. Our government has known this stuff for decades. And yet, very little has happened. In that EPA report, it actually provides a pretty decent framework for the National Climate Recovery Plan that we are seeking right now in the federal court. It ties it to 350, and guess what one major component of that is? Price carbon, exactly. It's in black and white in 1990. 350, gotta do a whole lot of stuff. One major thing that would really do a lot here is the pricing of carbon. What happened to those reports? We don't know. If any of you know exactly what happened with those reports, please see me after my talk. But the long and short is that not much happened with those reports. Somehow they were shelved and business continued as usual, to the point where President Obama described his view of the reports that James Holdren was providing to him as terrifying. So that none of that is news to us, that the situation is terrifying right now, or that young people are facing apocalyptic change. But what may be new to some of you in the room is the degree to which your government knew about all of this, knew how to fix it, and did nothing. However, our claims are not that the government did nothing despite that knowledge. Our claims are that the government acted affirmatively. They knew for more than 50 years about all of this scientific threshold and how to fix it, and yet they affirmatively permitted pipelines, and yet they affirmatively subsidized the fossil fuel industry, and yet they affirmatively leased public lands for the mining of fossil fuels. Our government, despite all that knowledge, took affirmative action to exacerbate the problem at a time when it could have been remedied much more easily, and has actually caused the current crisis that we have as a result of intentional action on the part of our government. So these aggregate actions, permitting, subsidizing, allowing mining and other fossil fuel exploitation on public lands, and generally facilitating the fossil fuel industry, violate the government's public trust responsibility to protect that atmospheric resource for folks today and future generations, violates the substantive Fifth Amendment due process rights of our young plaintiffs to the right to life and property, because as a result of the government's affirmative actions, we have climate change at the degree to which we do and will in the future, and the government's actions resulted in disparate treatment of these young people as compared with older folks like myself who've been able to enjoy a pretty unfettered life, but now young people are going to be shouldering these consequences. So those are the claims in this lawsuit. And remember I told you that lawsuits all involve law and facts? The law of the case is one thing, and the facts of the case are the things that are resolved at trial. The federal government and the fossil fuel industry moved to dismiss the young people's entire case. They said there's no constitutional protection, there's no equal protection violation, there's no public trust responsibility. We don't have this obligation to protect you that you are saying. They moved to dismiss the case. The young people secured from the court a resounding win on the motion to dismiss. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a historic court ruling. It is akin to Brown versus Board of Education, which found the constitutional right to equal educational opportunity. It's akin to Obergefell v. Hodges, which found the constitutional right to marry whom you choose. In this case, the court found that there is a United States constitutional right to a climate system capable of sustaining human life. It's hugely significant. It is a beautifully written decision. I commend it to any of you, lawyers or non-lawyers. It is beautiful. It's so important, and this case is so consequential that I want to take a few minutes to focus on some of the rulings that the court issued on November 10th, 2 days after the election of Donald Trump. The judge said this lawsuit is of a different order than the typical environmental case. It alleges that the federal government's actions and inactions, whether or not they violate any specific statutory duty, have so profoundly damaged our home planet that they threaten plaintiffs' fundamental constitutional rights to life and liberty. Even when a case implicates hotly contested political issues, like climate change, the judiciary must not shrink from its role as a co-equal branch of government. Just as marriage is the foundation of the family, a stable climate system is quite literally the foundation of society, without which there would be neither civilization nor progress. Wow, again, like, I appreciate your reception of the young plaintiffs. Your appreciation of that language coming out of a United States federal court is very, very gratifying and very due and deserved. The court found that the right to a climate system capable of sustaining life is fundamental to a free and ordered society, and that without a balanced and healthful ecology, future generations stand to inherit nothing but parched earth incapable of sustaining human life. I didn't have to really pick through this decision to find these gems. It is filled with really grounded appreciation for the gravity of this case. And in the interest of time, I'm not going to be able to read you some of the other gems of this. Suffice to say that this judge understands the consequence of what is before her and the ramifications to the young plaintiffs who have brought the case. One statement down at the bottom there is, "This is no ordinary lawsuit." I don't really know what an ordinary lawsuit is, but the fact that Judge Aiken singled this one out as not being one of those is fairly consequential, I believe. So what's happened since November 10th? Well, we had the Trump inauguration, and very definitely a change in tactics in how the defendants are responding to this case. In fact, and this is quite a complicated legal procedural conundrum, but Donald Trump and the Trump administration have asked to appeal this court decision that we just examined. So they're asking to take up to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals this constitutional ruling that Judge Aiken issued in November. In order to do that before trial, remember, you're supposed to be at the first level. You get your legal rulings, and then you go to trial and prove the facts of the case. Win or lose, then you go up to the appellate court, so the appellate court can consider it, and then win or lose there, someone can potentially go to the United States Supreme Court. But you do this in an orderly fashion, and you finish at level 1, then you go to level 2 and level 3. There are very unusual circumstances when you can take an appeal in what's called an interlocutory appeal. The Trump administration tried to do that. In order to do so, generally, you need the permission of the lower court. The lower court said no. 2 judges in the lower court said no, you cannot appeal this case at this time. The Trump administration has taken what Justice Kennedy has referred to, not in this instance, but they are seeking a writ of mandamus in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. And Justice Kennedy has referred to a writ of mandamus as a drastic and extraordinary remedy. So the Trump administration is now seeking a drastic and extraordinary remedy to take an appeal of this case. They are asking the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals to mandate that the lower court, the district court, release the case for appeal to them. Drastic and extraordinary, asking one court to do something that the lower court has already refused to do. So, that's where we are. That happened, oh look, my PowerPoint is completely out of date because I had to submit this to Ashley 1 week ago, and between then and now, it wasn't one court, the first of 2 district judges. The second district judge came in and refused, and then the Trump administration went to the Ninth Circuit on seeking the writ of mandamus. This case is going fast and is on fire. Nonetheless, the young people are preparing for trial, and I remind you that at trial, alternative facts are perjury, right? It's true. It's true. You can't get away in court with what you can get away in political processes. Very significant. These facts and circumstances are going to be weighed very carefully by what you can already see as a very careful judge. The other significant development is just a week or so ago, those intervener trade associations, National Association of Manufacturers, American Petroleum Institute, American Fuel Petrochemicals Association, they've moved to withdraw from the case. You are such an easy crowd. But again, thank you for your appreciation of the significance of this stuff. It is huge. The trade associations have said that the reason that they withdrew is because they are comfortable with the representation that the Trump administration will provide to this case. However, I will point out that their withdrawal came about a week before for one of them and the day before for 2 others of a date when the court had asked them to issue some admissions about some facts in the case. So, the court is just trying to take this very huge case and narrow it. Like, what's in dispute here, right? And so the judge asked the fossil fuel, the intervening trade associations to tell the young people in the court their position on things like, are we above 400 parts per million? Is 350 the place we should get, right? And in fact, they decided to withdraw from the case. President Trump can withdraw the United States from the Paris Agreement, but he cannot withdraw from this lawsuit. So here we are today, gathered. You folks are all charged up. Tomorrow you're going to the Hill. And Wednesday, we are back in court with all of the parties and the judge. We're going to learn a lot then about how the judge wants to handle these motions to withdraw. We're going to learn about how the judge thinks he is going to advance trial preparation in light of the Trump administration request for the writ of mandamus from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. So stay tuned. There will be some developments after Wednesday, and as I say, PowerPoints don't stay very relevant in this case, so stay tuned. So the young people are saying that their future is a constitutional right. I told you that I was going to introduce you to the last of the 21 plaintiffs, and so I would like to introduce you to Avery McCray, who is 11 years old from Eugene, Oregon. Can you run that?
Hello, my name is Avery and I'm 11 years old. I would like to begin by saying thank you to all our friends and family, the Raging Grannies, 350.org, and my classmates at the Village School who have shown your support for something that is so important to me. I'm aware that there are people out there who are saying things like, those kids don't know anything. I would like to tell you what this 11-year-old knows. I know that I love the earth, and I know it is being threatened by rising temperatures. I know that I love salmon and they are being threatened by warming rivers. I know that the Mackenzie River is my source of drinking water, and it comes from snowmelt. I know that I love snow and there's less of it in the Cascades. I know that I love snow leopards, elephants, and sea turtles, and many more who are being threatened by climate change. I know that one of the best things about the state of Oregon is the beautiful ocean and the life under the waves that's being threatened by ocean acidification. I know that I have a constitutional right to a stable climate. And I know that one of the government's jobs is to make sure that the future planet will be hospitable for generations to come. I know that I can't vote, but I know that I have a voice. I know that it is not my job, but I will do my part to secure the right for a healthy environment for those who follow me. Thank you.
What a privilege to be involved with these young, brave plaintiffs. Say again? Good. Yeah, like it's good day to day, I'm telling you. So Avery's doing what she can do, and I imagine that there are some of you, despite all the hard work that you already undertake, are asking what you might be able to do to become involved in this case. First of all, please go home, tell your friends, tell the members of Congress and senators tomorrow that there is a constitutional right to a climate system capable of sustaining human life. There's a federal court action that has already found that. The game is changing right now. Let your friends and family and neighbors know that we are at the cusp of bringing about the change that you all have been working towards so long, and that we are going to help push over the edge with this lawsuit. As well, this case, so far, the judge is saying that the case is going to go to trial in 2017. Quick, really fast track. Now, all of these antics and delay tactics of the Trump administration, we'll see how they all shake out. But when this case does go to trial, we are hoping to mobilize people around the country and indeed around the world to demonstrate solidarity and support for these young plaintiffs and the constitutional right to a climate system capable of sustaining human life. We envision that there will be rallies all around the country, certainly on the first day of the trial, and hopefully for every day thereafter. If you'd like to get involved with our mobilization effort, with spreading the word, you can go to our website, ourchildrenstrust.org, and just click on Join the Movement. And when you join, you have a number of options that you can choose about what you might like to be involved with, and then one of our staff members will get back in touch with you, tell you where we are in that process, recognizing that we're going to learn a little bit more maybe on Wednesday. It's all in flux, but these kids are winning this case, and they're going to save the planet. Thank you. No. Wait, stay standing, please. Oh, everyone turn toward the center of the room, please. And now applaud again for the amazing efforts of the Citizen Climate Lobby. Good luck tomorrow.